data maturity and analytics are not technologically related. They really relate to your people and your processes. They relate to not having a strategy of how you're going to use the data, not having the talent within your organization to execute on that strategy, having data that is of poor quality. I mentioned in a law firm context, that's usually unstructured text data, but it could vary across organizations if you're not collecting the right data and the data that you're collecting is not of sufficient quality to be leveraged. Data is often siloed across organizations. So various business units in your organization might be collecting the right data, might have data that could be leveraged, but you may not know what other business units in the organization have and how you could bring all that data together to generate value. And that really comes back to the overall point that data strategy has to be a priority in order for it to be successful, and preferably a priority at the top of the organization to allocate the resources and the time that are necessary to do this correctly. So this is what I call the 3 Bs, which I think are the biggest barriers to data science adoption, and that is budget, bureaucracy, and backbone. And I've run into this numerous times. You know, you come back with from a conference or from meeting with a client, you have a great idea of how you want to implement data in your practice, in your business. You think of all the ways that it would generate value, and then you're immediately shot down with somebody saying, well, that's not in the budget this year. We just don't have the resources to allocate for that. There's a lot of approvals that we have to jump through. The bureaucracy is just too much for us to get approval to do this. And that brings it to a matter of backbone. There has to be somebody in your organization, whether it's you or whether it's somebody above you, that has to make data maturity and data adoption a priority and have the backbone to say, we're going to allocate the resources in our budget. We're going to go through whatever approvals are necessary in order to execute on this because we believe that it's valuable and that is essential to running any type of business in the 21st century. You have to have a data strategy and a plan for how you're going to effectively leverage data to generate value for your organization, or you're leaving a lot of value on the table. Okay, so how do you overcome these barriers to data maturity? I think the first thing, you have to meet your stakeholders where they are. So yeah, I mentioned I'm a practicing attorney. Most of the stakeholders that I work with are also practicing attorneys, and many of them don't really understand data or analytics at all. You'll mention using data in our practice to generate value, and their eyes glaze over. They say, what's data? I know Google collects my data, but I don't really understand what data is exactly. So it's just kind of a non-starter, and they just kind of say, well, I don't know about that technological stuff, so figure that out on your own time. But the way that I've been able to be successful in implementing analytics projects in a law firm is by speaking their language. So instead of saying, we're going to use technology, we're going to use data, we're going to use analytics, I might say something like, we're going to take this legal information that we're collecting for our clients anyway, and we're going to put it in a more usable format so that we can generate value for our clients and help them make better decisions and help them make those decisions faster and more cheaply. So that speaks the language of attorneys. It didn't say data, it didn't say AI, it didn't say technology. I spoke the language of my stakeholders, which is we want to help our clients make better decisions faster and more cheaply. So that's one way to kind of bring people over to your side and to translate some of the technical aspects of analytics into something that your stakeholders will understand and appreciate. And then the other suggestion I have is not to try to do everything at once. Instead of saying, we have this grand plan, we're going to use AI, we're going to use sophisticated data science techniques, we're going to hire a team of data scientists. Just try to think in terms of discrete projects. And it's good for you to have a grand plan to bring your organization into a data mature space. But try to think in terms of how you pitch this, more in terms of small bite-sized pieces of, we're going to tackle this challenge, and then we're going to move to the next thing, we're going to tackle that challenge, and it all sort of builds on each other and allows you to get executive buy-in for your projects. So these are the 3 main points that I'm going to focus on in the rest of the presentation, and that is in doing what I just talked about and getting buy-in and generating successful analytics-driven projects in any type of organization. It's very important that you start with utility, that you produce quick wins and immediate ROI through these projects, and that you make every innovation that you're working on a building block for the next innovation. So let's take that first one, start with utility. So if you've seen Stanford eCorner, they have a number of videos with entrepreneurs and CEOs, and usually they talk with them. It's an interview style format, and they talk with them sort of right before they get big. And so they had an interview with Mark Zuckerberg in 2005, just as Facebook was starting to become a household name. And what struck me about the way that he described Facebook then is he wasn't talking about all the things that they're doing with people's advertising data and marketing data. He wasn't talking about the big plans that I'm sure that he had for Facebook at the time. It's going to revolutionize the way people communicate with each other online. Didn't say anything like that. He said, I was in college. I decided Harvard needed a Facebook. They didn't have one, so I made it. And it's mostly just a utility for people to figure out what's going on in their lives and their friends' lives. So very simple description there. And he gets right at the value to the users of Facebook, which is that utility of allows people to see what's going on in their friends' lives. And so this is a very important point if you're thinking about how to collect data in your organization that you don't currently have and how to leverage data is start with the utility. Don't start with all the grand plans that you have. Think about actual pain points and needs that your stakeholders have. Think about the fact that people have to want to give you their data. So think about the utility that you're going to deliver to them to incentivize them to deliver that data to you. And then also make sure that you future-proof every solution that you develop because you may be developing it right now for a short-term utility, but ultimately you're going to want to leverage that data for downstream applications. And so make sure that you're able to build on that later, that it's done in a way that is future-proof. So these are some examples of utilities that I've developed in the law firm context. We've done best practices playbooks. So we are structuring data, we're developing best practices, we're standardizing our processes. Checklists also provide for this structured data. So it's a good way to start without any kind of technology, without any significant investment. You're starting down the pathway of putting your organization in a position where you're able to leverage data effectively. And checklists reimagine your processes because you can then take every step in that process of that checklist, and instead of having it performed by one or two people, you can systematically push each step on that checklist down to the lowest labor rate because now you have a thoughtful process that's written down that you can disaggregate and send to the lowest labor rate in your organization. And automation, a lot of folks ask what really is automation, particularly on the legal side. We're automating cognitive abilities, not just sort of the factory processes that you typically think of with automation. But automation in any context is really just adding software to that checklist that I just showed you. It's adding software to push some of those steps in the process down to technology, down to software, as opposed to just down to a lower labor rate that's human. And what this process does, importantly, is it produces exhaust data. It produces a byproduct of structured data. When you automate it, it then goes into a structured database that puts you in a position to leverage that data for downstream analytics applications. Okay, so that's really where we're headed in terms of a data strategy, in terms of data maturity. It's not just about the technology, it's every bit about the process and the people and systematically pushing things down to the lowest labor rate to generate value for your organization and to allow things to be done ultimately by intelligent systems, by AI, because you're now collecting the right data and structuring it in a way that's able to be leveraged for those downstream applications. So that brings me to the next point, which is you need to produce quick wins and immediate ROI. So in thinking about which projects you want to tackle first, if you've got a grand vision for how your organization might be able to benefit from analytics, you need to think about ways to bite it off in small pieces so that things will quickly pay for themselves, so you can build momentum for your next initiative. And so that if you do fail, your failures aren't catastrophic. It's okay to fail on innovative projects sometimes, but you need to make sure that you fail small. So that people will still have faith in what you're doing. Okay, so in the law firm context, leveraging data is very difficult because it requires human experts. So to train a data model is very expensive because it has to be done in part by attorneys who, as I mentioned earlier, bill by the hour. And so there's a very large opportunity cost to doing any type of data-driven project in a large law firm. So one way, no matter what industry you're working in, one thing that you need to think about is to really understand how your organization makes money. How are you going to demonstrate ROI in any type of analytics project? So at a large law firm, one of the things I did was to innovate our revenue models. So let's think about ways that we can blend technology, software with our legal services so that we can charge a premium on top of our legal services for software as a service. We're also getting cumulative savings from efficiency through automation. So think critically, whatever your business is, think about what your revenue model is. Where are your expenses? How do you reduce expenses through efficiency and automation? How do you increase revenue through innovative revenue models? And that's all essential to how you generate ROI from an analytics project. There's another concept, an aggregation of marginal gains, and this has been used in sports, the Tour de France. It's also been used at University of Georgia's football program, and that is you don't have to do everything at once. If you improve every metric by just 1% and you do it consistently over time, that has a powerful compounding effect. And so if you plan an analytics project that even is just going to have some type of marginal gain, and then you do another one and you do another one, the aggregation of those marginal gains can generate tremendous value for your organization, even if no one project is going to make a huge dent. So just think about that when you're starting small, starting with checklists and playbooks and basic automation through software. That's one way you can generate a lot of value over time. It's also important that you maintain workflow integrity. So if you are introducing automation or intelligent systems, AI, to your processes, if people are going to buy into those, they have to fit within your existing processes. You can't totally reinvent all of your processes overnight and think that people will buy into that. They're just not going to use the software that you try to implement. So that leads to this next point of making every innovation a building block to the next innovation. If you start small, you start with modest changes to your workflows, with introducing a little bit of technology, a little bit of automation, a little bit of analytics. It builds upon itself and you can generate a lot of value very quickly. So introducing dashboards, that doesn't leverage any type of artificial intelligence or advanced data science, but a dashboard can make things more user-friendly, can give users incentives to give you their data and to start leveraging data in their business. And same thing with real-time performance reporting. If you have performance reporting tools that actually provide immediate value to the user, they're going to be incentivized to give you their data and help generate value for your organization. So we're running out of time here, so I'll wrap up. But again, I think these are the overarching points: is you can start small and generate a lot of value that will compound on itself. The key is, not jumping directly to artificial intelligence or directly to advanced data science applications if that's not what your organization is ready for. But thinking in that mindset, thinking we are going to, in 2 or 5 years, be in a position to leverage these advanced applications. What can we do today to set ourselves up for that? What data can we begin collecting? How will we structure that data? What software platforms are we ultimately going to need in order to leverage that data? And how do we get buy-in from the stakeholders within our organization so that once we actually have that process in place, once we have all the technology, we have the data, we're going to have the commitment within our organization to actually leverage that in a way that generates business value. So thank you.